Hello and welcome to NOV Live. I'm Michael Gaines and glad you're joining us today as we have a conversation, our ongoing conversation, bringing you technical experts and expert perspectives from NOV, from those that are helping shape the energy world around us. And we are always glad to bring those experts to you as well as have you be a part of our ongoing conversation. So to help us talk through that, as well as give you some insight into how you can see other conversations that we've had, we're going to go ahead and bring in our expert, Shelby Dumaine, to talk all about that. Hey, Shelby, good to see you today.
Hey, Michael, it's great to see you as well, too, and glad to see all of our viewers. I love seeing already, I'm seeing comments, people tuning in from the UAE, from India, from Oslo. So really excited. If you're watching this now, go ahead and let me know where you're watching from. I even see Brazil in there now, too. I love seeing our audience. And in the same place where you're letting us know where you're watching from, if you have a question at any point throughout the show, you can also comment those questions, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I am in the comment section throughout the entire show, looking at those, seeing what everyone's saying. And at the end of the episode, we're going to get to as many of those questions live. We're going to ask our expert your questions, and we're going to get as many answers as we can. And like Michael said, if you want to look at any past conversations that we've had, you can do so that as well at nov.com/live. So that link is on the screen now. It's nov.com/live. That's where you can watch all past episodes of both this show, NOV Live, as well as our other show, Inside Out with Asad Mahana. And if you have a question on any of those, you can still ask them. We still want to get your questions answered by the experts themselves. And you can email us at socialmedia@nov.com. So if you have any questions on any of those past episodes, it's on the screen now. That's the best way to get those answered. So all that aside, that's all the different ways you can ask us your questions. And now it's time for the part of the show where I ask you a question. It's time for Rig Geek Post of the Week.
Rig Geek's Post of the Week.
All right. And as a little preview for what's to come on the episode, we're talking about API requirements today. And so our question is along those same lines. If any of our rig geeks keep up with the latest in API requirements, then you might know the answer to this. And so our rig geek question this week is, what is the new time requirement to close the coiled tubing shear blind rams? So if you think you know it, go ahead and comment your answer or your guess. Even if you don't know, if you just have a guess about that new time requirement for closing coiled tubing shear blind rams, go ahead and let us know in the comments. And at the end of the show, after we talk to our guest, we are going to reveal the answer. And as a little hint, we might answer it, or if you pay attention, you might get the answer during the show. So see if you can guess that in time before we reveal it.
All right, man, that's good. Sometimes I wish I could jump in and not know the answer to these, but because I love guessing games, so the weekly trivia is one of my highlights. But there's a fun fact for you, so that's good, cool. All right, well, thanks, Shelby. Look forward to having everybody participate in the comments, and as Shelby said, as our conversation goes on, please do put your feedback and comments in, as we would like to engage with you and our guest. So speaking of our guest, I want to go ahead and introduce Steve Deshotels. He is a Senior Operations Director here at NOV and is going to be talking to us about our topic today, which is the API Recommended Practice 16ST. So Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for having me on today. I just wanted to,
yeah, please.
Yeah, the API has several documents to help the oil and gas industry. And a few years ago, they released one. It's called Recommended Practice for Well Intervention Well Control. And that document covers everything from the well control equipment to the operating equipment, how to use the equipment, what's the best practices for that. And this document was recently updated. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I'm I am a self-described guidelines and rule follower. So these kind of things are I don't tell many people, but I enjoy talking about this kind of stuff because it really helps give some needed guardrails, guidance, and insight, especially when we're talking about areas such as blind shear rams and other critical components. So I enjoy appreciate you coming on and having the conversation with us. So I think many folks have an understanding, and you've already given us a little bit of background as to why we have these recommended practices. And I know that many folks, such as yourself, have been a part of helping be or helping create the second edition or contribute to. Could you talk a little bit about maybe the evolution of that and how we got to this to where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. The first edition of this document was released in 2009, and the second edition of that document took a few years to pull together. We did a lot of investigative work on that document to make sure that the changes we were going to be making would make the operation safer and to be able to give guidelines to be able to have direction for those working in the field. So this latest document was just released here in February of this year.
Right. Okay. Well, and maybe to your point, maybe we can kind of dive in. So with the second edition of the API, the recommended practice, or RP16ST, what are some of the things that NOV has been working on specifically with the second edition?
Yeah, so I guess one of the main things that this second edition brings up is that the requirement to have a dedicated blind shear circuit, and that circuit is a means to designing the equipment to be able to close the blind shear rams.
Okay. Yeah, and so you talked to. So I mean, I'm generally familiar. But I one of the things that jumps out to me is you talk about the idea of having a dedicated the controls for the RAM being dedicated or called dedicated. What does that mean, and why do you need that?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, and good that you brought that up. So in the conventional well control equipment and that's used in the field right now, you have your primary well control stack, which is the controls that close your primary stack, your quad rams. You have your blind ram, your shear ram, your slip ram, and your pipe ram. And those are the everyday work rams that you use. So if, in case something comes up, you close those rams. But what we have added into this document is a dedicated shear blind ram and a dedicated shear blind ram circuit. And what that does is allows you to be able to close the unit quickly whenever you need to. So you're not pulling from the accumulator system that's already there. You actually have a dedicated accumulator package that is all set up, ready to go. So in an emergency, if you have to close that blind shear ram, you can use this circuit like this that we have showing up on the screen right now. That is one that is a standalone closing unit.
Okay. So then I think a lot of folks, especially those that are familiar with some of the requirements, especially when you're talking about time to close. I know on the drilling side, with the drilling rig requirements, I know that those I think are about 30. I think it's 30 seconds. Are those time requirements? Do they just carry over, or is that different?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one that we had quite a bit of debate on whenever we were modifying this document. And on the drilling operations, you have drilling mud that's your primary barrier for well control. When you're in coiled tubing operations, you don't have drilling mud. So you're going into wells that are live direct as soon as you open up the well and start going into it. So the industry felt that we needed to have a shorter time frame on that barrier.
Yeah, and so that's good to I appreciate you saying, there was some good debate on that, because I think, these things really show the level of rigor and of thought that goes into that. So that's good to hear. So, as we kind of look at these recommended practices and looking at, how that's been developed now in this second edition, when you kind of look at NOV, are there any particular offerings that are able to kind of complement or support these recommended practices? How do we approach that?
Yeah, sure. We have come up with on this particular application for closing the rams. We've come up with a closing unit. It's called a standalone closing unit, and this unit's able to. It's an air operated unit, and it's able to close the rams within the time limits within the new API requirement, which is a 10-second closure time. So we have this set up. It's got a tank right here. It's got all the accumulators. It has all the bells and whistles from the new API requirements, such as low-level alarms on it. It has a low air alarm. So if your air is too low, if your accumulator pressure is too low, or if your hydraulic pressure is too low, these are all alarms that we were using in the field, but those were now been included in the document as a recommended practice.
So, Steve, you strike me as a trustworthy guy, so that's great. However, I'm always one that likes to see the data, right? So do you have anything that shows, or is it otherwise able to kind of corroborate that the circuits close in the time required?
Oh, absolutely. We got a little video to show your audience today, and this is a 7/16 blind shear ram, and this was a test we ran in our shop, and you can see that ram's closing right now. Your tubing's cut, and at this point you'll be you're shut in, and that was less than 10 seconds. That was about 8 seconds there. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I thought you were going to draw me a picture, but I guess seeing is believing, I suppose. So no, that's really great. So yeah, and there he goes. So man, that's great. So I know that this document certainly covered some other areas. Obviously, we've talked about time to close, but what are some of the additional requirements and aspects that were implemented in this second edition of the recommended practices, the 16ST?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. On the drilling side, they have a requirement that the equipment should be inspected every so often, and we have taken direction from the drilling team to be able to do have an inspection every 5 years. This is a stack that we have. It comes in, as you see in the top left picture. This is a piece of equipment that's come into one of our facilities. This one here is a case that it's in our location in Brazil, and you can see there at the bottom you have the body is all blasted, ready for inspection, and on the right hand side that's a dye penetrant test. But we do a lot of this equipment that we bring in to one of our locations and do this inspection, and the document now has a recommended every 5 years to do an inspection. So we do have this is on one of the operations in Brazil, but we do have photos to show you of we have a quad that we have brought in. This is from our operation in Conroe, Texas. This is a quad that was brought in. So we take the quad and we start breaking it down, and then we'll send it out to get blasted. And then we have a picture to show you there of the body all cleaned up and blasted, and that's ready for inspection, and then the non-destructive examination. So you have other pieces of that. You have the cylinders, and then you have like the piston rods, all things that we break it down to its basic elements, go through a dimensional inspection of the critical areas for this so that it's able to function. And then once it's all finished, we send a brand new looking unit back out to the field. So.
Yeah, I mean, just that simple, right? I mean, man, if only it were a few clicks. But no, I think that's great. I love seeing kind of those before and after, especially knowing that you're able to have that enhanced functionality. So maybe to some of the comments you made just a moment ago, how can you talk a little bit about how you and the team and others are able to be positioned to help customers, especially when they're looking to meet these new requirements? What does that look like, and how are you able to help sort of fill in the gap there?
Yeah, so specifically on the recertification project, we have locations set up around the globe that can perform this recertifications. We have locations in the UK, US, Dubai, Saudi, Singapore, Brazil, and Argentina. Those are all locations that are currently doing recertifications on our products. And all that is controlled by the engineering department in our Conroe location. And they set the standards for the dimensional inspections, the NDE inspections, so that if you bring it in the UK or you bring it in Singapore, it's all done the same way. So they inspect it the same way. They use the same criteria for determining if something is fit for service or not fit for service. So some of the parts do wear out and have to be replaced. But we're always looking at new opportunities to be able to help the customers in those areas. And then we also do fly in technicians if you can't get something in or out of a country.
So I know that there are a lot of questions that folks have, and of course, one of the aspects that I think really helps is when folks are able to get a level of training and really support in that aspect. So are there any new requirements that the industry would be interested to know about, especially in training, kind of in the training capacity?
Yeah, some of the requirements is that the people operating the equipment, people doing the maintenance on the equipment have to be competent. And that's inherent in the API requirements that whenever you are doing something that you're competent, and especially when you're talking about well control equipment, you want to make sure that the technicians that are doing the work or have knowledge of the seals they're putting in there, the equipment they're testing, and how to do it properly. And we offer training that in all aspects of that, whether it's the coiled tubing unit, hydraulics training, or whether it's how to do the well control equipment. So we offer training classes with a hands-on training on how to do the service work, how to do the maintenance work on equipment. We both, with this, what we've been through last year, we've actually are putting together a virtual version of that's can try to do a hands-on virtual, which will be a little bit of twist from what we have been teaching lately, but that's definitely on the books for moving forward. So
yeah, no, that sounds very, very interesting. I'm glad that not surprised that you and the team are thinking of ways to still provide that level of support and training, even if it has, like you said, has to be a twist on an old approach. So I appreciate that. And we'll get some of the contact info out in just a moment. But before we do, I know that we've had a couple questions from folks who have been listening to our conversation. And so as always, I like to try to get out of the way so that we can get to as many of those questions as possible. So we're going to go ahead and bring Shelby Dumaine in so we can get those questions in. And as a preamble before you get going, Shelby, if you are watching us and have had that question in your head but haven't let it get out through your fingers here, feel free to put it in, whether you're watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. So with that, Shelby, I'll get out of the way so that you can get to one of the more important points in our convo, which is getting our audience questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you, Michael. Yeah, absolutely. If you have more questions, it's not too late. So we can get started with a question from Larry on LinkedIn, and I'll show it here on the screen. He was wondering, how do offshore closure times compare to onshore ram closure times?
Yeah, that's a good question. In this latest version of the document, we don't distinguish whether it's offshore or onshore. So regardless of the location, it has to be able to close. The blind shear rams will have to be able to close within 10 seconds, and the rest of the rams in the primary well control stack will have to be able to close within 30 seconds. So you have a 10-second closure time for one of the rams, the blind shear ram, and 30 seconds for all the other rams in there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And we got this next question actually on LinkedIn as well. Can you talk a little bit about how safety comes into play? Is there, how does NOV's role in these new API requirements, how does that come into play with safety?
Oh, absolutely. The whole idea of the blind shear rams is to make sure that the people working around the equipment are safe if something happens. So the dedicated blind shear ram is one of those that keeps the environment safe, keeps the people safe by being able to close. And the blind shear ram doesn't only close when there's nothing in the well, it also closes and shears the coil tubing or shears the wire line or whatever you may have be running into the well at that time. So the blind shear ram has to be able to close, shear whatever's in there, and also seal off from the well. So if you have a situation where you have to close, it's going to close and be safe. So the recommended practice tries to focus on the safety of the people working on site.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, I know we get asked a lot about safety, so I think that's really great to kind of hear about that side as well. And I actually have another question from Robin on YouTube, and he was wondering, can the closing unit be controlled from the coiled tubing control cabin?
That's a good question. That's the coiled tubing unit has we've allowed flexibility on how it can be controlled. So the dedicated blind shear ram can be controlled directly from the control unit that you're sitting in the control cabin, or it can be a standalone closing unit. So there's different options available for the industry, and a lot of depending on what region you're working in. In some regions they like to have the standalone closing units. In some regions they like to have everything at the control console inside the control cabin. So, but you can also control that inside the control cabin. So.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love any opportunity to customize. I'm always like, "Ooh, that's so interesting."
Absolutely.
So I have actually two more questions. So we did get, like I said, if you had any more, it's not too late. We actually got someone who came in with a really great one. So this is from Adam on LinkedIn, and he was wondering, is there any testing done or anything you can talk to as far as that 10-second closing time, how and if it's possible in cold temperature environments?
That's a great question. If you aren't aware, as the temperatures get colder, the hydraulic fluids that you use to use this is thicker and less. It takes more work to push that fluid out. So we have done some testing at our facility and at one of the sister companies that within NOV at Hydrorig, and we have shown that you can close these rams in less than 10 seconds, even if the temperatures drop as the temperatures drop. So we also are working with what we call a cold flow manager. This is a product that we are doing that will help that in the field. This is a product that NOV Hydrorig has worked on, and this is something that we worked on a couple of years ago and be rolling it out within the next couple of months. So be looking forward to seeing some of that. And then also you may have to have a unit that has different hydraulic fluid to be able to close within that time frame. So if you're working in real freezing Arctic weather, you may have to have a fluid that is better suited for that weather.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, man. You've done such a great job so far of answering. I've just been throwing questions your way, so I appreciate that. I do have one more before we go back to Michael, and that was, what locations are you performing these inspections, or are we performing the inspections?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So the main location that we do the work at is our Conroe facility, that is Conroe, Texas, and that is where most of the equipment is manufactured at. But we also do similar inspections. We do one in Great Yarmouth, which is in England, at the NOV facility there. We have an NOV facility in Dubai. We have one in Dammam, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and then we also have Southern Hemisphere. We do stuff in Brazil and Argentina. So those are the main locations that we're doing the recertification and inspections.
All right. So it sounds like we got the globe covered when it comes to research and inspections, especially as we're talking about the API recommended practice, or the RP16 ST. And we've been talking with Mr. Steve Deshotels, the Senior Operations Director for NOV here. So Steve, before we let you go, if folks want to read up a little bit more on some of the technologies or product offerings that you briefly mentioned today, where can they go to view that? Or if they'd rather send an email as a direct follow-up, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, sure. That's great. So a website would be www.nov.com/TOT. And if someone wants to send us an email or something, the email address is totsales@nov.com.
All right, great. Well, again, been speaking with Mr. Steve Deshotels on the API RP16 ST, the new recommended practice, the second edition of those practices. So, Steve, it's been a great pleasure hearing all of the insights, inside baseball, as some folks might say, on some of the practices there, and look forward to hearing more in the coming days. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it. Thanks for letting me come on.
It's our pleasure. And all right, well, before we wrap up our show, want to get our Rig Geek Post of the Week answer from Shelby. I would be remiss if we shut down the show without getting. I know sometimes I get a little excited. I'm like, oh man, but I don't want to leave folks hanging. So what was that? What was the question for those trivia masters out there?
Absolutely. So yeah, the question we asked is, what is the new time requirements for closing the coiled tubing shear blind rams? I want to make sure I get that order right. And I do want to give credit. We did get people got it right before we mentioned the answer in the show. So I did give you a hint that we were going to get to it, but we had several people got it correctly before we answered, and the correct answer was 10 seconds is the new time requirement. And we showed the video earlier. I want to show it again. So here are those rams closing. And Steve mentioned this is actually at 8 seconds, so a little bit under that time requirement, but the official API time requirement is 10 seconds.
Yeah, over deliver, right? So no, that's great. Yeah, and I am not surprised that folks pounced on the right answer. I mean, as you've rightly observed, Shelby, many a time, I should never be surprised at the knowledge prowess that is our audience. So that's really great.
That's right. Our rig geeks, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
That's right. That sounds like a bumper sticker. All right. I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Shelby. Appreciate it. And as always, a special thanks to our guests, and certainly to you, our audience, for joining us here on NOV Live. If you want to catch this conversation or others that we've had in the past, again, please visit nov.com/live, and you can check out all of our other conversations. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. And on behalf of all of us here at NOV, thanks for watching and for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.